Good sign, just keep putting them up. Chris, you've got big shoes to fill replacing Ross. Ross is a champ, but I can't wait to have you as part of our PC team down at Queen's Park. And I want to thank Michael and John from Algoma. And I see Kate, I never forgot you. Kate, she's one of the commanders and chiefs. And all the folks here behind me from Algoma Steel for hosting us today. I love the frontline women and men that work here. And sometimes, folks, you don't realize this is generational here, you know, from their fathers or their grandfathers, and this is home, and I'm going to have their backs. My friends, the Sault is a proud steel town. I know, I've heard about the threat of Donald Trump's tariffs to Ontario's steel industry. It's not just here in the Sault or across the north. I hear it in Hamilton, in Windsor, in London. I hear it in Brampton, in Oakville. Everywhere in Ontario, I've always been straight with the people of Ontario. Donald Trump's tariffs would devastate our economy. They'd put hundreds of thousands of jobs on the line, including here in Sault Ste. Marie. Businesses will struggle, prices will rise, families will feel it. But we'll get through this together. I'll tell you, folks, we're going to diversify our trade. We're going to expand our trade around the world. And just attract more companies here like we have over the last 7 years, $70 billion of investment and 850,000 new jobs. These folks have created, we've created the environment and companies will invest. We will stare down any threat. We will stand up to any attack and we'll do whatever it takes to protect Ontario. In this election, I'm asking for a strong, stable 4-year mandate. I'm asking for the strongest possible mandate that outlives and outlasts the Trump administration to weather this storm to protect Ontario. Yesterday in Thunder Bay, I announced our plan to unleash the economic potential of Ontario's critical minerals. Today, I want to share the next steps in our plan. The front line in our battle against Donald Trump's tariffs starts right here in Northern Ontario. Ontario has an abundance of critical minerals. In fact, we're home to the largest deposit of critical minerals in the entire world in the Ring of Fire. Chromite, cobalt, high-grade nickel, copper, platinum. Folks, we have 33 of the highest needs of critical minerals anywhere in the world. And the world wants them. Our allies need them. Ontario has them. Our critical minerals are essential to the global economy. They'll be a source of jobs and wealth for northern communities, for First Nations, for our entire province and country. But Ontario's critical minerals don't do us any good if they're stuck in the ground. And they definitely don't do us any good if they're ripped and shipped off to a far-flung place for processing. Now more than ever, as we stare down the threat of Donald Trump's tariffs, we need to build a resilient economy. We need to build a self-sufficient economy. We need to build a made-in-Ontario critical mineral supply chain. In the Trump era of constant threats and shifting goalposts, this is a non-starter. Our critical minerals will be Canadian mined by Canadian workers. They'll be Canadian processed by Canadian workers. They will be Canadian made every step of the way. To do so, a re-elected PC government will invest $500 million, that's $500 million, to create a new critical mineral processing fund. This funding will accelerate the development of processing projects. It will attract private capital and it will speed up the development of strategic projects across the entire critical mineral supply chain. This will mean good jobs right across Northern Ontario, and those critical minerals will flow down to Southern Ontario and will make the parts that the world needs. And it will mean a more self-sufficient province, a more resilient country. Here in the Sault, that also means standing up for our amazing steel workers, and this is a fraction of them behind me. The steel workers rely on this facility to bring home a paycheck, put food on their table, to pay a mortgage, pay rent, and be able to do things they might otherwise not be able to do. And I told them, I will always have the steel workers' backs. It's why our government is investing in electric arc furnaces for Algoma, right here in the Sault, Fiscal and Hamilton, to secure future steelmaking in Ontario and protect thousands and thousands of jobs. As Donald Trump threatens tariffs on steel and aluminum, I'm never going to stop fighting to protect steel workers in Ontario. And I'll do whatever it takes, no matter what the cost is. I will support our steel workers in this province. Friends, we're in a battle for the future of our province, for the future of our country. When it comes to protecting Ontario, I'll fight like I've never fought before. Donald Trump thinks he can break us. He thinks he can divide and conquer us. He doesn't know what we know. The Canadian spirit cannot be broken. I've never seen patriotism run so wild across this country, and especially a couple days ago. And they're going to rename, rather than the Gulf of the United States, it's going to be the Gulf of the second place hockey team. Canada will never be the 51st state. Canada is not for sale. This election about who we are, it's about the future we choose for ourselves. I choose a strong future, a future that taps into Northern Ontario's enormous God-given potential. Together we'll mine it, we will process it, we will make it, we will build it right here at home in Ontario. Together we will protect Ontario. I want to thank you and may God bless the people of Ontario. Thank you so much.
We will take questions from the media. Please come to the mic and state your name and outlet. Just a reminder, it's one question and one follow-up. First question.
Mr. Ford, you talk about having the steelworkers back. If the tariffs come in from the American government, what is your government, if you're re-elected, what is your government going to do to help Algoma Steel face those tariffs?
Yeah, great question. I'll tell you one thing. I don't know the exact details on these tariffs or if they're going to come in. I know he talks a lot, but we'll see what happens. But I'll give these people my word. I'll give the people of Sault Ste. Marie my word, and Hamilton, anyone who makes steel. We will do whatever it takes to protect their jobs. Simple as that. And I don't care about the cost. We can make up the cost down the road because I have confidence in the people right here in Algoma and other steel manufacturers around Ontario.
Mr. Ford, you called the election to fight the tariffs, and you don't have a plan. When do you expect to have that plan in place?
We have a strong plan for the tariffs. Well, you don't have a plan without seeing what they're going to come at us. We have a strong plan to reinvest into the people, into jobs. We've shown that we've invested into Algoma with the electric arc furnaces, and we're going to continue to invest in the people. We have the greatest people in the entire world, the greatest sub-sovereign nation anywhere in the world, right here. We're an economic powerhouse. Let's go back 7 years ago when there was 300,000 jobs being chased out of this province. Today, as I said earlier in my speech, there's over 850,000 more people working today than there was 7 years ago. We're going to create the environment and conditions for companies to come here and invest into the people, into companies, and we've seen over $70 billion of investment. The good news is, I talked to Vic Fedeli the other day, my Minister of Economic Development and Trade that flies all around the world. There's a potential of $70 billion more we're looking at for this year. Could these tariffs affect it? Yes. But we can compete against anyone. And the reason we can compete is because of the people. We have the greatest people, and we also have the greatest colleges and universities, graduating over 70,000 STEM graduates, science, technology, engineering, and math, coming out of our colleges and universities every single year. No one in North America can do that. We are the greatest nation in the entire world, bar none, over anyone.
Good day, Mr. Ford. It's Charlie Pinkerton from the Trillium here.
Hey, Charlie. It's nice you flew up here to see me.
I actually drove. It's about 16 hours just to ask you a few questions.
Okay. Let her rip, buddy.
Wouldn't trade it for the world. You've promised so far in the North billions in new spending. There's going to be billions in new spending for the 401 tunnel that you've promised.
Yep.
I know you're not a taxes guy, so
Yes.
How are you going to pay for all of the promises that you've made?
Oh, Charlie, great question. See, the Liberals and NDP, they believe in one thing. They tax you to death. Do you know, Charlie, that this terrible carbon tax, the worst tax ever on the backs of Canadians, Algoma pays $6.4 million on tax. Imagine what they could reallocate to their workers or to research or investment in infrastructure. So first of all, that's up to the federal government. But I'm going to tell you a little story here. When we came into office, the revenues were $150 billion. Okay, there's $150 billion. Remember that number. We are now up to $214 billion. That's $64 billion more in revenues because we created the environment, because there's 850,000 more people paying taxes that weren't before. There's $70 billion worth of investment that are paying taxes that they weren't paying before. I believe in growing revenue. And the magical thing about that, Charlie, is that we've never, ever raised a tax. We actually reduced the burden of taxation off the backs of companies $8 billion a year. And I drove by some gas stations. The gas is pretty expensive here. Just imagine if we didn't get rid of the 10.7 cents a liter on gas. It'd be another almost 11 cents. But again, let's go back to the carbon tax. April the 1st, it's going to be 20 cents a liter. You know, folks, just imagine if we could get rid of that 20 cents from the federal government, and then we'd be a little more competitive because that affects everyone. We got rid of the tolls on the 412, 418. We got rid of the tolls on the last 44 kilometers, saving people $7,200. And the one fare is saving people $1,800. All I believe in giving back people money. Now, the difference between ourselves and the Liberals and the NDP are very simple. Last year, we saw $3 billion more of revenues come up to the government. Well, right away, the Liberals and NDP and most governments and most politicians believe it's their money. It's not their money. These hard-working women and men paid that tax. The least thing we could do is give them that money back, $200, because that stimulates the economy. It may not seem a lot, but I'll tell you one thing, as simple as going out for dinner, buying your kids a pair of sneakers, doing something you might otherwise not be able to do. The taxation is not the government's money. It's the people's money. And we're going to give it back to the people. That will stimulate the economy. That's $3 billion going into the Ontario economy.
All right, and there's a law in Ontario, the Lobbyist Registration Act, that I believe 4 years ago was, by law, supposed to be reviewed. Your government promised in the heat of the Greenbelt scandal about a year and a half ago that it would finally start that review, and it's never happened. If you're reelected, will you start that review, and if so, when?
Sure, we'll look into it, Charlie. But I can tell you the most important thing right now for Ontarians and Canadians is survival, is the cost of living, is the economy. Am I going to have a job, 4 months from now? I'll tell you one thing, if the PC government gets elected, not only are you going to have a job, we're going to have more jobs because we're going to compete against the world. When it comes to the critical minerals, when all the rest of the world, including Donald Trump, is saying invest $1 billion and I'll get permits in a year, our federal government at the Ring of Fire has been holding this up for 20 years. 20 years. So the rules of the game are going to change. They're going to change to benefit the people of Ontario. We're going to make sure we get the shovels in the ground to get those critical minerals out, get them processed here, and get them shipped out around the world. That's what we're going to do. We're not going to be waiting around for this, for that, dilly-dallying along for 20 years as the Americans will be eating our lunch. So the high-grade nickel, let me tell you about the high-grade nickel. High-grade nickel, people think nickel's nickel, it's not. High-grade nickel coming out of Sudbury, which I'll be there this afternoon. The Americans, 50% of their nickel they're using is coming from Sudbury. So, you know something? We have a lot of critical minerals that they need. We have no problem selling it to them. But it's going to be a challenge if they try to put tariffs on us. It's not going to be good. It's not going to be good for us, but I'm going to make sure it's not going to be good for them either.
Good morning, Mr. Ford. Corey Nordstrom, CTV News.
Hey, Corey.
With 10,000 people without a doctor in Sault Ste. Marie, regular ER closures in the town of Thessalon, what would 4 more years of a progressive conservative government do to address specific issues in healthcare on the north?
So when that one doctor left, I heard the whole story. We brought in 2 health teams to make up for that. We also hired Dr. Jane Philpott Canadian renown. We're going to connect every single person in Ontario over the next 4 years with a family doctor or a primary caregiver, I should say. That's what we're going to do. We're investing in it, $1.8 billion to make sure we connect. Let me tell the folks, in the whole country, we have more people connected to primary care than any other province in the country. Is it good enough? It's not good enough. We're at 90% people connected. That 10%, when you have 16 million people, that's a big number, 10%. But we're going to close that gap. We're going to invest in it. We're hiring new doctors. We've hired over 15,000 new doctors, 100,000 new nurses, 30 that are going to be graduating. We're building new hospitals. We're building new medical universities. Actually, we're adding more seats right in the north here as well. We're paying for their education, the nurses and the docs. So we're full steam ahead. You know what's a shame? We shouldn't be in this position because the previous government, they cut medical seats, they fired nurses, they didn't build hospitals. We're building 50 new hospitals, $50 billion around the province.
Per capita, compared to each of the other provinces, the progressive conservative government has underfunded healthcare significantly when it's compared.
I'll tell you what.
Why is it taking so long to get to this point, and why was nothing done to avoid the problem that we're seeing today in Northern Ontario?
Wow, I thought I just explained it. I'll do a quick one right now. So, investment in healthcare has increased more than ever in the history of Ontario, $33 billion more. At one time, it was $50 billion. Just over the last 7 years, we've increased it to $85 billion. Can we do better in the health area? 100%. We need to streamline things. I'll give you an example when I talked to emergency doc the other day. He told me, Doug, I said, why is there a lineup emergency doc? He says, 50% of the people shouldn't be in here. You got a little scrape on your knee or whatever, they should be at a clinic down the street. I'll give you one more story. I get a phone call the other day. I give everyone out my phone number. I get a phone call a little while back. The lady's on the phone. It was at night. She says, well, I went to Niagara and I waited 4 hours, so I got fed up and I went to Welland Hospital, waited 2 more hours. I said, ma'am, what's wrong? How can I help you? She said, I have a bad, really sore throat. I said, respectfully, that's the problem right there. Do not go to the emergency department for a sore throat. We've also added common ailments. Over 2 million people have been able to go to their pharmacy. They get prescriptions refilled or get new prescriptions. We're throwing everything we can at the healthcare system. I want to add, we have the best doctors, the best nurses anywhere in the entire world. And we're producing more docs and more nurses, and we're paying for their education. That's never been done before. And one thing you haven't taken into consideration, we're the fastest growing region in North America. We're growing faster. They always say Florida and Texas, we're the fastest growing states. Granted, combine Texas and Florida, we had more people come to our country just last year alone, not to mention the last 3-4 years. We saw over 800,000 people show up to our province last year. That's 800,000 more people that need health care, that need to go to the doctors, that need to go to the hospital. If you add up the last 3 years, there was over 1.5 million people just landed here in Ontario. I'll tell you why they landed here in Ontario. First, the federal government brought them here, but secondly, this is a land of opportunity. This is a land of growth. This is a beacon of hope around the world, is right here in Ontario. And we're going to keep moving forward and making it the greatest place in the world to live, raise a family, and find a job.
This will be the last reporter.
Good morning, Kenneth Armstrong, Sault Ste.
Hi, how you doing?
Excellent, thank you.
Good.
The local riding association here in Sault Ste. Marie had no say in the selection of Mr. Scott as the candidate, and I'm just wondering if you can give us an idea of the reasonings behind that, and maybe invite Mr. Scott to come up and give his elevator pitch. He hasn't been to the local all candidates meetings, and a lot of Saultites have not heard from him directly unless he showed up at their door.
Okay, well, first of all, I encourage all our candidates. You don't have to go to these debates. Some do, some don't. Personally, what debates are, you bring your teams all in, you debate back and forth. I'd rather have Chris knocking on doors, talking to the people directly. And Chris knows this riding unlike anyone, in my opinion. He worked for Ross Romano for years. He knows every detail, has talked to constituents, and he's just a great representative. So that's it. Chris, do you want to say a few words? Come up and just say a couple words there.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot, Premier, and thanks a lot for the question. I think it's a great question. And like the Premier said, standing at everybody's doors, actually talking to real people is really important. I also think it's important, if we're going to call these things all candidates debates, that all candidates get invited. I was extremely disappointed with some of the gamesmanship that's gone on with the OSSTF and other members. That I think it's extremely disappointing that those sort of things are going on, and I look forward to next week, when I think there's an opportunity for some all candidates meetings that all candidates have actually been invited to. So thanks a lot.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
I'll tell you one thing, he's a worker, this guy. He's going to work his back off to represent the people of the Sioux. He's going to have a strong voice down at Queen's Park. He's going to have everyone's back in here, like I'm going to have their backs. And he's going to be a great representative for the people of Sault Ste. Marie.
Mr. Ford, there isn't a single full-time child and youth psychiatrist working in Sault Ste. Marie. Algoma Public Health has reported it takes over a year for a child or youth to see a psychiatrist for that first visit versus just over 30 days in Southern Ontario. And with information from the Office of the Registrar General, we pulled 10 years of death statistics, which show that the rate of death among youth in Northern Ontario by self-harm, intentional self-harm, is 4 times that of the provincial average. Why is there such a disparity, and what will the Ontario PC government do to change that?
Well, any youth that may take their lives, it's terrible. It's heart-wrenching, and it affects a lot of people, youth and adults, about mental health. We're putting $3.8 billion into mental health. Again, it's never been done before. We have a dedicated minister, Minister Michael Tobolo. I should say Dr. Michael Tobolo is leading the way. There's been more funding put into mental health and addiction than ever before. I want to try to help people. I want to get them back on their feet. I want to make sure that they have an opportunity in life. But we're going to continue investing into mental health and addiction in a big way.
Thank you. This concludes today's press conference.
Anyways, thank you so much, everyone. I want to thank you. I want to thank the people of Sault Ste. Marie. I want to thank the hardworking people from Algoma. I'll say it again. I'm going to have your backs. You need a loud voice, a strong voice down at Queen's Park. And there's one party, there's one candidate. That's Chris Scott. And we appreciate your support on February 27th. Please get out and vote for Chris Scott. Thank you and God bless. Thank you.
So go ahead and tell me who's gonna fight for you.